The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure built from materials that shimmered like liquid metal. Inside, Ambassador Jiwon Kim stood alone before the assembled representatives of 47 alien species. Each delegate sat in their designated space, their forms ranging from beings of pure energy to creatures with too many limbs to count. The air felt heavy with tension and barely hidden contempt. Jiwon wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. She had prepared for this moment for months, but nothing could truly prepare anyone for what she now faced. The lead counselor, a massive being called Vorath, loomed above her position on the floor. His species resembled enormous beetles with crystalline shells that reflected the chamber's dim light. Humanity has been granted observer status in this council for exactly 100 cycles. Vorath's voice echoed through translation devices embedded in every surface. In that time, you have proven to be exactly what we feared: aggressive, unpredictable, dangerous. Jiwon kept her expression neutral. She had learned early in her career that showing emotion to most alien species was seen as a weakness. We have followed every protocol. Humanity has not violated a single agreement. Your species expands too quickly, another voice spoke up. This came from Delara, a counselor whose form shifted between solid and liquid states. You claim worlds faster than any species in recorded history. You build weapons when we have told you to focus on peace. We build defenses, Jiwon corrected carefully. Every species represented here maintains military forces. Why should humanity be different? Vorath's shell clicked together in what might have been laughter or irritation. Because you are new. Because you are unproven. Because your history shows us what you truly are. You wage war upon yourselves with enthusiasm. You destroy your own kind over resources, beliefs, and mere differences in appearance. What will you do to us when you grow strong enough? The accusation hung in the air. Jiwon felt anger rising in her chest but forced it down. She had argued this point 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. Human history was violent, yes, but it was also the story of growth, of learning, of becoming better. Our past does not define our future, she said. We have united as a species. We have ended our internal conflicts. We seek only to be part of this greater galactic community. Your words are pleasant, Vorath said, but the Council has made its decision. Humanity will dismantle its military fleet. You will accept Council oversight of all human colonies. You will submit to regular inspections and restrictions on your reproduction rates and territorial expansion. This is not negotiable. The words hit Jiwon like a physical blow. This was worse than even the darkest predictions. Complete subjugation, the end of human sovereignty. You cannot be serious, she said, her careful neutrality finally cracking. What you describe is not membership in a council. It is slavery. It is survival, Vorath replied coldly. Your survival is a matter of fact. If you refuse these terms, the Council will have no choice but to consider humanity a threat that must be neutralized. Neutralized, Jiwon repeated, her voice barely a whisper. You mean destroyed. We mean contained, Delara interjected, though her tone suggested the distinction was minimal. Humanity will be restricted to your home system. Any ship that attempts to leave will be destroyed. Any colony outside Earth's solar system will be evacuated or eliminated. You will have exactly one rotation of your homeworld to comply, 24 hours. They were giving humanity one day to surrender everything or face annihilation. Far from the council chamber, Captain Minho Park stood on the bridge of the battleship Seoul, one of humanity's newest and most powerful warships. His vessel orbited Mars along with 300 other ships of various sizes and capabilities. It was humanity's defensive fleet, positioned to protect the thriving colonies on Mars and the asteroid belt. Minho was reviewing patrol schedules when the communication came through. His second officer, Lieutenant Yuna Bay, brought up the message on the main screen. As he read Jiwon's urgent transmission from the council meeting, his blood ran cold. Sir? Yuna asked, noticing the change in his expression. Sound general alert, Minho ordered, his voice steady despite the shock. All ships to combat readiness. Recall all personnel on leave. I want every captain on secure channel in 10 minutes. As alarms began to sound throughout the Seoul, Minho stared at the red planet below. Millions of humans lived there now. Children played in the pressurized domes. Families built new lives in the frontier communities. And now, if the council had its way, all of that would end. On Mars itself, in the sprawling research facility beneath Olympus Mons, scientist Hana Lee was making a discovery that would change everything. She had been analyzing anomalies in the colony's defense systems for weeks. Small glitches that made no sense. Errors in code that should have been perfect. Hana ran her fingers through her short black hair as she stared at the data streams on her screens. She had not slept in 30 hours, surviving on coffee and determination. There, in the deepest levels of the defense network, she found it. Code that did not belong. Instructions that would cause the entire system to fail at a specific signal. No, she whispered, her hands shaking as she traced the sabotage back through the system. It had been there for months, inserted gradually, carefully hidden among legitimate updates. Someone had been planning this for a long time. She grabbed her communicator and called the base commander. "Sir, we have a serious problem. Our defenses have been compromised. If someone activates this code, every shield generator, every weapon platform, everything will go offline simultaneously. Can you fix it?" The commander asked urgently. Hana's fingers flew across her keyboard, trying different approaches. "I can try, but whoever did this was good. Really good. This will take hours to safely remove without triggering it, maybe days." "We might not have days, Dr. Lee. Do what you can." As Hana worked frantically to undo the sabotage, she realized something chilling. This level of access, this kind of sophisticated infiltration, it could not have been done by outsiders. Someone with deep knowledge of human systems had helped the Council prepare for this moment. Someone had betrayed humanity. Back in the Council chamber, G1 made one final attempt. "Members of the Council, please reconsider. We can find another way. Dialogue, compromise, mutual understanding. The time for dialogue has ended," Vorath declared. "You have your terms. You have your deadline. This session is concluded." G1 watched as the Council members began to leave, most of them not even bothering to acknowledge her presence. She stood alone in the vast chamber, feeling the weight of her species' fate pressing down on her shoulders. She had failed to convince them, failed to find a peaceful solution, failed to protect her people. But as she turned to leave, she felt something else rising alongside the despair. Anger. Cold, hard anger. The Council thought humanity would simply roll over and accept subjugation. They thought fear of annihilation would make humans obedient. They were about to learn how wrong they were. G1 activated her communicator to send an encrypted message to Earth. The Council had made its move. Now it was time for humanity to respond, and that response, she knew, would shake the foundations of the galaxy itself. The attack came without warning. Captain Minho Park had just finished briefing his fleet commanders when the sensors screamed. Dozens of Council warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Mars' orbit. They appeared like predators emerging from darkness, their weapons already charging. "All ships, battle stations," Minho shouted. "Get those civilians into shelters now." On the planet below, alarms wailed across every dome and settlement. Parents grabbed children and ran for the reinforced bunkers. Workers abandoned their posts and scrambled for safety. But there were so many people, and the shelters could only hold so much. The Council ships opened fire. Brilliant beams of energy tore through the thin Martian atmosphere. The first strikes hit the northern agricultural domes. Glass and steel exploded outward into the low-pressure environment. Thousands of people died in seconds, their bodies exposed to the freezing, airless void. Minho watched in horror as more strikes rained down. The Council was not targeting military installations. They were hitting civilian centers. This was not a battle. "It was a massacre. Return fire," he ordered. "All ships engage the enemy." The Soul surged forward, its massive engines burning bright against the darkness. Around it, the human fleet came alive with fury. Missiles launched in swarms. Energy weapons charged and fired. The space between Mars and its attackers became a storm of destruction. But the Council had brought overwhelming force. For every one of their ships, humanity had 10. But the Council vessels were larger, older, equipped with technology developed over thousands of years. Human ships exploded under concentrated fire, their crews dying without even time to scream. Lieutenant Yuna Bay coordinated the defense from her station.
"Captain, we are outnumbered in firepower 3-1.
"We cannot win this fight. We do not have to win," Minho said grimly. "We just have to buy time for the evacuations. Every minute we hold them is another 100 people reaching safety." The Soul shook as an enemy blast struck its shields. Warning lights flashed across every console. Minho gripped his command chair and watched as 2 destroyers moved to cover their flagship. Both ships took devastating hits meant for the Soul. Both ships died so that others might live. Down on Mars, Hana Lee worked frantically in her underground lab. The sabotage code in the defense systems had activated the moment the Council ships arrived. Every automated weapon platform on the planet sat silent and useless. The shields that should have protected the domes flickered and failed. Come on, Hana muttered as her fingers flew across the keyboard. She had isolated part of the malicious code, but removing it without crashing the entire system was like performing surgery on a beating heart. An explosion rocked the facility. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered but stayed on thanks to backup generators. Hana could hear screams in the distant corridors as people ran for deeper shelter. She wanted to run too. Every instinct screamed at her to abandon this hopeless task and seek safety. But if she could restore even some of the defenses, she could save lives. She had to try. Her communicator crackled. All personnel, this is Base Commander. Evacuate to Level 9 immediately. The eastern section has been breached. Repeat, evacuate now. Hana ignored it. She had almost cracked the final layer of encryption. Just a few more minutes. In orbit, Commander Taeyang Choi commanded the destroyer Incheon. His ship was older than most of the fleet, built in the early days of human expansion. It lacked the sophisticated weapons of newer vessels, but it was fast and its crew knew every trick in the book. Target their command ship, Taeyang ordered, pointing at the massive Council dreadnought that hung back from the main battle. If we can take out their leadership, maybe we can break their coordination. His tactical officer looked at him with wide eyes. Sir, we will never get through their escort screen. Then we will have to be creative, Taeyang said with a tight smile. Launch all sensor drones. Set them to maximum jamming. Helm, take us in fast and low. Use the debris field for cover. The Incheon dove toward Mars, skimming so close to the atmosphere that its hull began to glow with friction heat. Behind it, dozens of small drones scattered in all directions, flooding enemy sensors with false signals. In the chaos of battle, the Council ships lost track of one small destroyer. Taeyang brought his ship up behind a cluster of destroyed vessels, using their burning hulks as cover. When they emerged, they were less than 1,000 kilometers from the Council command ship, point-blank range in space combat. Fire everything, Taeyang commanded. The Incheon unleashed every weapon it had. Missiles, torpedoes, energy beams, even the emergency kinetic impactors meant for asteroid deflection. The sudden, concentrated barrage caught the Council ship by surprise. Its shields flared and buckled. Explosions rippled across its hull, but it was not enough. The dreadnought was simply too large, too well armored. It returned fire with weapons that dwarfed anything humanity had built. The Incheon's shields lasted 2 seconds. Its hull lasted 4. The ship broke apart in a ball of superheated plasma. Taeyang and his entire crew died, but their sacrifice had done something important. They had proven that the Council ships could bleed. Back on the Sol, Minho received word of Taeyang's death. He had known the man for 15 years. They had trained together, served together, laughed together. Now he was gone, along with 200 other brave souls. Captain, Yuna reported, her voice shaking. We have lost 40% of the fleet. The colony reports over 12,000 civilian casualties. Sir, we have to fall back. Minho looked at the tactical display. She was right. They were losing. Badly. But if they retreated now, the Council would have free access to the planet. The slaughter would accelerate. Then his communicator chimed with a priority message. It was Hana Lee. Captain Park, this is Dr. Lee at Olympus Station. I have restored partial defense systems. I can give you targeting data for the colony's remaining missile platforms, but you will need to coordinate the firing solution from orbit. Hope surged through Minho's chest. Dr. Lee, you are a miracle worker. Send me everything you have. Data flooded the Sol's computers. Minho saw it immediately. 300 ground-based missiles that the Council thought were disabled. If they fired all at once, concentrated on the right targets, Yuna, transmit firing solutions to all ships. We are going to hit them with everything at once. Ground batteries, ship weapons, even the damn kitchen sink. Coordinate for maximum effect on my mark. The crew worked with desperate efficiency. This was their last chance. If this failed, Mars would fall. All units confirm ready, Yuna reported. Minho took a deep breath. He thought of all the people who had already died. He thought of the millions more who would die if he failed. He thought of Earth, of humanity's right to exist among the stars. Fire, he said. Space lit up with fury. Thousands of weapons fired as one. The coordinated assault overwhelmed the Council's targeting systems. Their shields could not adapt fast enough. Ships exploded. Others tumbled out of control, their systems failing. The carefully organized attack formation dissolved into chaos. Down on Mars, Hana watched through the lab's few remaining cameras as missiles rose from hidden silos and streaked toward the sky. She had done it. Against all odds, she had pulled victory from the jaws of defeat. Then the ceiling collapsed. Hana had time for one thought before the darkness took her. She hoped it had been enough. In orbit, Minho saw the Council fleet breaking off. They had not been destroyed, but they had been bloodied. They withdrew to regroup, leaving behind a field of debris and death. "Status report," Minho ordered, his voice hoarse. Yuna consulted her screens with tears running down her face. 18,000 civilians confirmed dead. 123 ships lost. 8 colonies completely destroyed. Olympus Station. Olympus Station is gone, sir. Collapsed from orbital bombardment. Minho closed his eyes. Hana Lee had saved them all and it had cost her everything. But this was only the beginning. The Council had attacked without provocation, without mercy. They had murdered children. They had targeted civilians. They had tried to break humanity's spirit. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. They had awakened humanity's fury, and that fury would burn across the galaxy until justice was done. Earth burned with rage. News of the Mars massacre spread across the homeworld in hours. Every screen showed the same horrific images. Domes shattered and exposed to vacuum, bodies floating in space. Children who would never come home. 18,000 dead. 18,000 lives snuffed out because humanity dared to reach for the stars. The reaction was immediate and total. Every nation on Earth activated its military reserves. Factories that had been building civilian ships retooled for war production. Millions of volunteers flooded recruitment centers, so many that they had to be turned away. The entire human race mobilized with a speed and unity that shocked even those who had called for it. In a secret facility beneath the mountains of Korea, engineer Sumin Kang stood before a massive vault door. Beside her, 5 generals and the Secretary of Defense waited as the ancient locks disengaged. The door had not been opened in 50 years, sealed away when humanity had declared its wars over. Inside lay humanity's darkest secrets. Weapons designed but never built. Technologies developed in desperate times and then hidden away when peace came. Plans for ships that were never meant to see the light of day. Sumin walked among the data archives, her tablet glowing as she accessed files that had been classified above top secret. She was 32 years old, brilliant, and had just been given unlimited authority to turn theory into reality. "This one," she said, stopping at a particular file. "The Reaper-class destroyer. We designed it 20 years ago but never built it because it was too aggressive, too focused on pure destruction." General Kim, a weathered man with gray hair, looked at the specifications. "Can you build it?" "I can build 20 of them in 6 months," Sumin replied. "If you give me the resources and stop asking questions about ethics and treaties." "The treaties are dead," the secretary said grimly. "The Council killed them when they murdered our children. Build your ships, Engineer Kang. Build them fast and make them deadly." Sumin smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Oh, they will be deadly. I promise you that." Across human space, similar scenes played out. Hidden bases activated. Secret shipyards opened. Weapons that humanity had promised itself it would never use again were dusted off and prepared for war. And overseeing it all was Admiral Kyung. Yoon Kyung was 60 years old and had spent her entire life in service to humanity's military. She had fought in the last wars before unification. She had helped design the fleet that now defended human space. She knew war in ways that younger officers could only imagine. Now she sat in the command center of Luna Base, Earth's moon, coordinating the greatest military mobilization in human history. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing every ship, every base, every resource humanity possessed. "Admiral," her aide said, approaching with a datapad. "Captain Park's report from Mars. He recommends we establish a defensive perimeter at Jupiter. Pull our forces back and wait for the Council's next move." Kyung read the report carefully. Minho was a good officer, cautious and skilled. His recommendation made tactical sense. But tactics were not what humanity needed right now. "Send Captain Park new orders," Kyung said. "He is to hold position at Mars, no retreat. I want the Council to see that we will not back down." "But Admiral, our forces are depleted. Another attack will find us ready," Kyung interrupted. "Because we are not going to wait for the Council to come to us. We are going to take the fight to them." Her aide looked shocked. We are going on the offensive. Humanity did not survive ice ages and plagues and wars by cowering in corners, Kyung said, her voice hard as steel. We survived by fighting back, by being too stubborn to die. The Council thinks they can intimidate us into surrender. They are about to learn why that was a mistake. While Earth prepared for war, Ambassador Ji-won Kim worked a different kind of battle. She had not returned to Earth after the Council session. Instead, she traveled to neutral space stations, to worlds that were not part of the Council, to species that watched the conflict with wary eyes. At a trading station on the edge of known space, she met with representatives of the Viridian Empire. The Viridians were not members of the Council, and they had no love for the larger organization's heavy-handed tactics. "You want our support," the Viridian ambassador said. It was not a question. "I want you to see the truth," Ji-won replied. She activated a holographic projector. Images filled the space between them. The Mars attack, the destroyed domes, bodies frozen in vacuum, children's toys floating among the debris. "The Council did this without provocation," Ji-won said quietly. "We violated no laws. We broke no treaties. We simply existed, and for that crime, 18,000 humans were executed. This could be your people next. The Council demands obedience above all else. How long before they decide your independence is a threat?" The Viridians studied the images in silence. Finally, they spoke. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing you cannot afford to give," Ji-won said. "Let us use your space for resupply. Do not block our movements. And when this is over, remember who started this war and who was forced to finish it." The Viridian considered for a long moment. "We will remain neutral, but we will remember. And we will allow your ship's passage through our territory." It was a small victory, but Ji-won would take it. She moved on to the next meeting, and the next. Slowly, carefully, she built a network of neutral parties who would not stand in humanity's way. She could not ask them to fight beside humans, but she could ensure they would not fight against them. Back in the hidden facility, Suman worked 18 hours a day. She had assembled a team of the best engineers humanity had to offer. Together, they were creating weapons the galaxy had never seen. The Reaper-class destroyer was a nightmare made real. It was smaller than traditional battleships, but faster, more maneuverable, and packed with weapons that pushed the boundaries of known physics. It was not designed to occupy territory or intimidate enemies. It was designed to kill efficiently and without mercy. "The main weapon is a focused plasma lance," Suman explained to Admiral Kyung during an inspection. "It can punch through standard Council shields in a single shot. The secondary batteries are kinetic accelerators. Simple physics, but at these velocities, a chunk of metal becomes a weapon of mass destruction." Kyung walked around the prototype, taking in every detail. "What about defenses?" "Minimal," Suman admitted. "The Reaper's defense is speed. It hits hard and gets out fast. We are building these for hit-and-run tactics, not prolonged engagements. How many can you produce?" 20 in 6 months, as promised. "But Admiral, I have other designs. Bigger ships. Slower, but with firepower that could crack a moon. Give me a year and unlimited resources, and I will give you a fleet that the Council will fear." Kyung smiled. "You have both. Build your fleet, Engineer Kang. Give me the tools I need to make the Council regret the day they threatened humanity." On Mars, Captain Minho Park struggled with his new orders. "Hold position. No retreat." It felt like Admiral Kyung was using his fleet as bait, daring the Council to attack again. But as he reviewed the data coming from Earth, he began to understand. Hidden bases were going active. New ships were being built. Weapons were being tested. Earth was not preparing to defend. Earth was preparing to attack. His communicator chimed. It was Lieutenant Yuna. "Captain, long-range sensors are picking up something. Multiple contacts all across human space. Small bases, hidden outposts. Sir, they are everywhere. How did we not know about these?" Minho pulled up the data and felt his eyes widen. Dozens of secret installations were revealing themselves, all bristling with weapons and ships. Some were in asteroid belts. Others clung to lifeless moons. A few were actually hidden inside gas giants, using the violent atmospheres as cover. "We have been preparing for this," he whispered. "For years, maybe decades. We have been preparing for the day someone tried to destroy us." Humanity had always known that reaching for the stars meant encountering other species, and humanity had learned from its violent history. Never again would humans allow themselves to be defenseless. Never again would they trust that peace meant safety. The Council had thought humans were naive. They thought humanity's talk of peace meant weakness. They had not understood that humans could want peace while still preparing for war. They had not understood that the same species that had split the atom and walked on the moon had also invented tactics and strategy and the art of war. Itself, Admiral Kyung's fleet began to assemble at designated points across human space. New ships joined old ones. Experimental weapons were mounted on proven hulls. And in the secret shipyards, the first Reaper-class destroyer completed construction and began its trial runs. They named it Hana, after the scientist who had died saving Mars. It was fast, deadly, and hungry for revenge. The Council had awakened humanity's fury. Now they would face its full force. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had always known, that the most dangerous predator is not the biggest or the strongest. It is the one that refuses to give up, the one that fights with everything it has, the one that would rather die on its feet than live on its knees. The Council had tried to make humanity kneel. Instead, they had made humanity rise, and that rising would shake the foundations of the galaxy itself. The first strike came from nowhere. A Council supply convoy traveling through what they thought was secure space simply vanished. 50 cargo ships gone in minutes. No distress calls. No wreckage, just empty space where a fleet had been. In the Council chamber, panic spread like wildfire. How is this possible? Vorath demanded, his crystalline shell clicking with agitation. We have sensors across every major route. We have ships patrolling constantly. How did they attack without being detected? Dalara's form flickered with uncertainty. Perhaps they did not. Perhaps this was sabotage from within, an accident. 50 ships do not have accidents simultaneously, another counselor snapped. This was an attack. The humans have struck back. They were right. And they were wrong. The attack had not come from nowhere. It had come from a place the Council never thought to look. From within the asteroid belt they had deemed too dangerous and worthless to patrol. Hidden among millions of rocks and ice chunks, human forces had built bases that were invisible to long-range scans. Captain Minho Park had not been idle, while Earth prepared its grand strategy. He had taken his battered fleet and done something unexpected. Instead of retreating to defend Earth, he had scattered his ships throughout the solar system, creating a network of hidden positions that could strike at any Council force that entered human space. The supply convoy had been destroyed by the Hana, the first Reaper-class destroyer. Pilot Hanil Song had commanded the experimental ship with deadly precision. The Hana had emerged from behind a large asteroid, its weapons already firing. The plasma lance had carved through the convoy's escort ships in seconds. Then it had vanished back into the asteroid field before reinforcements could arrive. Hanul was 26 years old and had been flying combat ships since she was 18. She had lost her parents in the Mars massacre. Now she channeled her grief into pure, focused violence. All targets destroyed, her tactical officer reported. No survivors. Debris field consistent with total annihilation. Hanul felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The Council wanted a war? She would give them a war they would never forget. Set course for Rally Point Gamma, she ordered. We have more work to do. The attacks continued. Fast, brutal, impossible to predict. A Council patrol fleet defending a mining operation found themselves under assault from 3 directions at once. Human fighters swarmed like angry insects, their weapons tearing into larger ships with coordinated precision. By the time the Council ships could respond, the humans had disappeared. A diplomatic station in neutral space, where Council members gathered to coordinate their war effort, experienced a catastrophic systems failure, life support shut down. Artificial gravity failed. Emergency evacuation procedures malfunctioned. Later investigation would find evidence of sophisticated hacking, the kind that required deep knowledge of Council systems. Admiral Kyung-yoon watched the reports come in from her command center on Luna. Each successful strike, each Council loss, each moment of enemy confusion. She did not celebrate. This was not about victory. This was about sending a message. We are bleeding them, her aide observed. Their supply lines are in chaos. Their patrols are scattered trying to defend everywhere at once. But Admiral, they still have overwhelming force. If they commit their full fleet to an attack on Earth, they will not, Kyung interrupted. Not anymore. We have shown them that attacking Earth means leaving their own territory undefended. Every ship they send against us is a ship they cannot use to protect their own people. They are learning the first rule of fighting humans. We will make you hurt worse than you make us hurt. Her strategy was working. The Council had expected a desperate defense. They had prepared for humanity to cluster around Earth, making one last stand. Instead, they found enemies everywhere, striking from shadows, disappearing before they could be caught. But Kyung knew this could not last forever. Eventually, the council would adapt. They would figure out the patterns. They would find the hidden bases. Humanity needed to do more than just sting the giant. They needed to hurt it badly enough to make it reconsider the entire war. Ambassador Ji-won Kim provided the opportunity. She had been working tirelessly in neutral space, meeting with species that had grievances against the council. The galaxy, she discovered, was full of races that resented the council's domination, but had been too weak or too afraid to resist. Now, seeing humanity fight back, they began to whisper. On a frozen moon orbiting a gas giant, Ji-won met with a representative of the Keltheran communes. The Keltherans were not warriors. They were traders and merchants, their entire civilization built on commerce. But they had information that could change everything. The council's main shipyards are in the Antares sector, the Keltheran representative said, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. Heavily defended, yes, but all their new construction happens there. Destroy those yards and you cripple their ability to replace losses. Ji-won leaned forward. Why tell us this? Because the council charges us taxes that strangle our trade, the Keltharan said bitterly. Because they enforce laws that benefit them and crush everyone else. Because if humanity wins, perhaps the galaxy becomes a place where someone does not have to bow to survive. Ji-won transmitted the information to Admiral Kyung immediately. Within hours, a plan began to form. It would be risky. It would cost lives. But if successful, it would prove that humanity could not just defend itself. It could strike at the heart of council power. 3 weeks later, a fleet assembled in secret. 20 human warships, including 5 of the new Reaper-class destroyers. Captain Minho Park commanded from the Seoul. Pilot Hanul Song led the fighter squadrons. And aboard every ship, crews prepared for the most daring raid in human history. They called it Operation Hammer. The journey to the Antares sector took 5 days of faster-than-light travel. They moved through routes provided by the Keltherans, paths that avoided council patrol zones. When they arrived, they found the shipyards exactly where the intelligence had promised. Massive orbital structures surrounded 3 planets, each yard kilometers long, capable of producing dozens of warships simultaneously. Around them, a defensive fleet of 200 council ships maintained constant watch. It should have been impregnable. All ships prepare for combat, Minho ordered. His hands were steady on his command chair, but his heart pounded. If this failed, they would all die, and Earth would have lost a significant portion of its fleet for nothing. Hanul checked her fighter's systems one last time. Behind her, 100 pilots did the same. They had trained for this. They were ready. Remember the plan, she transmitted to her squadron. Fast, aggressive, no hesitation. Hit the yards and get out. Do not try to be heroes. Do not try to rack up kills. This is about the mission, nothing else. Minho gave the signal. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly on top of the nearest shipyard. The council defenders, expecting any attack to come from the outer system, were caught completely out of position. Before they could respond, the Reaper destroyers opened fire. Plasma lances tore through the shipyard's superstructure. Sections the size of cities exploded into debris. Incomplete warships still in construction tumbled out of their berths and collided with other structures. Chain reactions of destruction rippled across the facility. The fighter squadron screamed past, their weapons targeting specific weak points. Hanul's fighter dove through a forest of construction cranes and scaffolding, her guns blazing. Behind her, explosions marked her squadron's path. The council fleet scrambled to respond, but human ships were already moving to their next targets. The Seoul and 3 other battleships engaged the approaching defenders, trading fire in a deadly dance. Ships on both sides exploded into fire and vacuum, but the humans kept pressing forward. Minho watched as a second shipyard began to break apart under concentrated fire. Damage report. Forward shields at 40%, Yuna called out. Hull breach on deck 7. Casualty reports coming in. Sir, we cannot sustain this much longer. We do not need longer, Minho replied. 3rd yard is the priority target. All remaining ships concentrate fire. Hanul, clear us a path. The fighters dove ahead of the battleships, their smaller weapons picking off defensive platforms and point defense systems. It was suicide duty and everyone knew it. 10 fighters died in as many seconds, but they cleared the way. The human battleships unleashed everything they had left. Missiles, kinetic weapons, energy beams, even ramming one destroyer into the yard's central reactor when its engines failed. The third shipyard shuddered, buckled, and then exploded in a blast of nuclear fire. "All ships, retreat," Minho ordered. "Emergency jump now." The surviving human ships activated their faster-than-light drives and vanished, leaving behind a scene of total devastation. 3 shipyards destroyed, dozens of incomplete warships reduced to scrap, thousands of Council personnel dead, and humanity had proven something crucial: they could strike anywhere, anytime. No target was too well defended. No location was truly safe. As the Soul limped back toward human space, Minho reviewed the casualties. They had lost 6 ships. 200 humans had died, but they had crippled the Council's ability to replace their losses. The strategic equation had shifted. News of the raid spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Neutral species watched with new eyes. Other subject races began to whisper more openly, "Ab." The Council chamber felt different this time. Fear hung in the air like smoke, thick and choking. The delegates who had once spoken with such confidence now argued in worried voices. Vorath's crystalline shell had lost some of its shine. "We have lost 3 shipyards, 17 supply convoys, 42 patrol fleets, and 2 entire defensive stations. Our losses exceed anything we projected. Humanity is not collapsing. They are growing stronger." "How is this possible?" Delara flickered with agitation. "They are one species. We are 47. They have existed in space for barely a century. We have ruled for millennia." "They are fighting with a desperation we have never encountered," another counselor said. "Every human ship fights like it is their last battle. Every pilot acts like they have nothing to lose. They do not retreat. They do not surrender. They simply fight until they win or die." In truth, humanity was not growing stronger. They were bleeding just as badly as the Council. Earth's shipyards worked day and night to replace losses. Every family knew someone who had died in the fighting. Resources were strained to the breaking point. But Admiral Kyung-Yoon understood something the Council did not. Wars were not won by the side that suffered less. They were won by the side that could endure suffering longer. She stood in the Luna Command Center, studying the strategic maps. Human forces were stretched thin across a dozen systems. Every victory came at terrible cost, but the Council's forces were spreading even thinner, trying to defend everywhere at once. "Admiral," her aide said quietly, "we have received a communication from the Council. They are requesting a meeting. Neutral ground. They say they want to discuss terms." Kyung felt a surge of satisfaction. 3 months ago, the Council had demanded humanity's surrender. Now they wanted to talk. That alone was a victory. "Send word to Ambassador Kim," Kyung ordered. "Tell her the Council wants to negotiate, and tell her that she speaks with the full authority of Earth and every human in the galaxy. Whatever terms she sets, we will honor." Jiwon received the message while meeting with a coalition of neutral species. The irony was not lost on her. The Council had tried to isolate humanity. Instead, humanity had built new alliances, new friendships, new partnerships with species who had been waiting for someone to stand up to the Council's domination. She traveled to the neutral station where the meeting would take place. This time, she did not go alone. Representatives from a dozen neutral species came with her, observers who would witness whatever agreement was reached. The Council delegation looked tired. Vorath's movements were slower. Delara's form flickered erratically. They looked like what they were, leaders facing a war they could not win. "Ambassador Kim," Vorath began, his voice lacking its former arrogance. "We are prepared to discuss an end to hostilities. The Council recognizes that continued conflict serves neither of our interests." "You mean the Council recognizes they cannot destroy us?" Jiwon said bluntly. "Let us be clear about what is happening here. You attacked my people without provocation. You murdered 18,000 civilians, including children. You expected us to break, instead we fought back. And now you realize that destroying humanity will cost you more than you are willing to pay." The Council delegates flinched at her words, but they did not deny them. "What are your terms?" Vorath asked. Jiwon had spent 3 months preparing for this moment. She activated a holographic display showing a document that would reshape the entire galaxy. "First," she said, "the Council will formally recognize humanity as a sovereign species with full rights and protections. No restrictions on our expansion, our military, or our reproduction rates. No oversight, no inspections, no limitations." "Agreed," Vorath said quickly. Second, the Council will pay reparations to the families of those killed at Mars. 1 billion credits per life lost. 18 trillion credits total. The Council delegates gasped. It was an enormous sum. But Vorath nodded slowly. Agreed. Third, Jiwan continued, and this is not negotiable. The Council will be reformed. No longer will a handful of old species dominate all others. Every species, regardless of age or military power, will have equal representation, equal votes, equal voice. Now the Council members erupted in protest. This was not just about humanity. This was about changing the fundamental power structure of the galaxy. Impossible, Delara said. The Council's structure has existed for thousands of years. You cannot simply— I can, Jiwan interrupted coldly. And I will. Because if you refuse, this war continues. And I promise you, we will not stop until your fleets are ash and your shipyards are rubble. Humanity has learned to live with pain. Can you say the same? The truth was evident in the Council members' faces. They could not. Species that had known only peace and prosperity for millennia could not endure the grinding horror of total war the way humanity could. They had grown soft while humanity had remained sharp. Captain Minho Park received word of the negotiations while overseeing repairs to the Soul. The ship had been damaged in half a dozen battles, its hull scarred and dented, but it still flew. Like humanity itself, it had survived through sheer stubbornness. Do you think they will agree to the ambassador's terms? Lieutenant Yuna asked. Minho watched welding torches spark against the ship's hull. They will. They have to. We have proven we will never stop fighting, and that is a truth they cannot defeat with weapons. He was right. After 3 days of debate, the Council agreed to every term. The formal ceremony took place on the neutral station, broadcast across the entire galaxy. Vorath, speaking for the Council, acknowledged their aggression and accepted full responsibility for the war. But the most important moment came afterward, when the Council's flagship, the massive dreadnought that had led the attack on Mars, sent a request to dock with the Soul. Minho stood at the airlock as Vorath himself came aboard, accompanied by a small delegation. The huge alien had to duck through doorways designed for humans. He looked uncomfortable and vulnerable, surrounded by human crew members who watched him with hard eyes. Captain Park, Vorath said through his translator, I have come to formally surrender to you, not to humanity, not to Earth, to you, personally, as the representative of those who defended Mars. Minho felt the weight of history pressing down on him. He thought of all those who had died, Tai Yang and his crew on the Incheon, Hana Lee in her laboratory, the 18,000 civilians who had never had a chance to fight back. I accept your surrender, Minho said quietly. On behalf of every human who fought, who bled, and who died defending our right to exist. May this moment mark the beginning of a new era, one where no species has to fight for the basic right to live among the stars. Vorath bowed, a gesture his species rarely made to anyone. Your species has taught us a harsh lesson, Captain. We thought power came from size, from age, from control. You showed us that true power comes from the will to fight for what matters no matter the cost. The formal peace treaty was signed aboard the Soul, witnessed by representatives from across the galaxy. Humanity did not just gain its independence that day. It fundamentally changed how the galaxy was governed. The Council was reformed. New species were admitted with full voting rights. The old guard's stranglehold on galactic policy was broken. It would take years to work out all the details, but the principle was established. No species would ever again have the power to threaten another with annihilation simply because they could. Ambassador Jiwan Kim watched the signatures appear on the treaty with tears in her eyes. She had started this journey trying to find a diplomatic solution. She had failed. But through war and suffering, through blood and sacrifice, humanity had achieved something even better than peace. They had achieved respect. Admiral Kyung-Yoon addressed the fleet from Luna Base one final time. Every ship, every station, every human in space watched as the woman who had led them to victory spoke. We did not want this war, she said. We did not seek glory or conquest. We only wanted to live in peace, to build our homes among the stars, to give our children a future. The Council tried to take that from us. They failed, not because we were stronger, but because we refused to surrender what matters most: our freedom, our dignity, our right to determine our own destiny. On Mars, in the rebuilt settlements rising from the ruins of the massacre, children played in parks dedicated to those who had died. A massive memorial stood at Olympus Station's former location, listing every name of those lost. Hana Lee's name was carved at the very top, honored as the hero who had saved them all. Pilot Han Il-sung walked through the memorial, her hand touching names she recognized: friends, comrades, people who had laughed and lived and died in humanity's desperate fight for survival. She had survived the war, but she would carry these ghosts forever. Engineer Suman Kang stood in her shipyard, watching as the last Reaper-class destroyer was decommissioned. The weapons she had built had saved humanity, but she hoped they would never be needed again. She began designing her next project: ships meant for exploration, not war. Ships that would carry humans further into the galaxy, seeking knowledge instead of conflict. Years passed. The scars slowly healed. Human colonies expanded once more, this time without fear of sudden destruction. Trade flourished. Cultural exchanges began. Humanity took its place not as conqueror,